Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Please join me in a massive round of applause for Leyla Acaroglu.
Oh, that was brilliant.
Thanks very much.
That was actually really impressive. Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Australian, so I apologise for any of the things I say that make no sense. I'm going to talk about disrupting the status quo by design. My background is as an industrial designer and as a sociologist. I quit design school because I realised I was learning how to create crap to sell to idiots, and went and studied sociology because I was fascinated by how the human brain and the human experience was. And I became like incredibly obsessed with sustainability and social change, like to a level of OCD level obsession. And so my work over the last few years has been around designing experiences that challenge the cognitive conditions that we have as humans. So I run a couple design agencies and a school, and I'd like to develop toolkits that are analog based, and they're based on overcoming some of the cognitive biases that humans have. I have a toolkit coming out next month, actually, that's all about overcoming the gender biases that impede women's ability to progress to positions of leadership. And Google's a great example of where that is still quite a problem, although I love the diversity in this room. So ultimately, I really love to think about the way in which we can create experiences that activate our cerebral conditions so that we can move towards a more sustainable future as a collective species. Sounds way more complicated than it actually is. I make games, I get to play them with people, it's really fun. So ultimately, I love to try and figure out how you can create an experience that's conducive to going from one state, such as the status quo, to another state. And that could be like a really micro shift or a really massive transformative shift. And I'm super interested in the way in which we can create intrinsic change. So a motivator that gets you to fill your own knowledge gap or experience gap so that you ultimately have this kind of like mass transition from one state to another without it being incredibly uncomfortable. It sounds almost like I kind of mess with people's minds. I think that would probably be about right. But for good and not evil, I promise. So far, that's how it's been. So my work ended up, I did a PhD because that was fun. And I figured out that one of the big problems that we have in the world when it comes to social change is that we lack a little bit of agency and the mental tools that we need in order to figure out how we can participate with more significance. And so I developed this methodology called the Disruptive Design Method. And I'm going to run through a bunch of stuff today, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about this. But I just wanted to clarify that I think that those of us who are in the creative space, who are interested in figuring out how we can design solutions or shift the status quo, forever kind of engaging with how the world around us is full of problems. So do we have designers in the room? Any form of design? Yay. Do you have a problem obsession? Like, yeah? Yeah, it's like, oh, I have to fix that. It's like a compulsion. Yeah, I have the same thing, like airport security lines. I've redesigned it like 20 times. I mean, there's enough time to think about it as well. And remote controls, like, holy shit, guys, like, can we not fix this? None of the buttons make any sense. So I'm super interested in this design. I started a school for adults called the Unschool. We pop up around the world. We are like basically a roaming, emerging group of people who are interested in challenging the status quo. The Unschool's for creative rebels and change agents, and like we get to do some really fun stuff. But what I'm really interested in talking about today is the way in which the things that we design us, and the cognitive conditions that create or disable change. So the thing is that the human brain is basically a mess. A beautiful hot mess, I would say. It uses 20% of our body's energy, and it controls everything we do, most of the things completely subconsciously. And this is one of the sad but beautiful things about being a human, is we think we have autonomous control, but it turns out we actually don't. Because a bunch of neurochemicals are basically influencing the majority of our decisions well before we have any conscious awareness of it. So this idea of us all being this kind of like autonomous beings that make rational decisions that will maximize their efficiency and efficacy in the world. That's kind of how our modern society is based. Means that we have these predispositions to maintaining a status quo, to avoiding things that are uncomfortable or awkward. And so this status quo means that we often perpetuate or assume that the things that are already around us just should be there, right? So we just kind of all unfortunately end up going in the same trajectory or direction until there's some dramatic reason to shift the status quo. But I'm really interested in how we can design experiences, products, processes, and systems that ultimately challenge the status quo so that we get to a point collectively as a species that's way more sustainable than we have today. Because I'm not going to lecture you all on like all the shit that's going on in the world and some of the problems. I'm sure you all read the news. You are Google. You probably know things before anyone else. But ultimately, it's super important that we think about as a species like where we're going and what we want to do and what kind of future we want. Because personally, I don't really want to move to Mars. Like, I'm totally cool with planet Earth. Other people can move there, but my recollection of, like, is it Terminator with the three-breasted woman? I just prefer here. And there's butterflies here, which I think is really nice. So for me, I'm sticking with planet Earth. Anyone want to move to Mars? Any, like, Mars voyage obsession here? Oh, that's good. So we all want to stick on planet Earth. Great. Then I think thinking about the way in which the things that we create us is super important. And I don't think we have these conversations enough. I think we are so used to this rapid technological and material, like consumer-based society that we don't ever stop to question, do we need this type of dramatic shifts in the way our brains work and the way we physically interact with these technologies that exist around us, through to like, what does this say about our species? The things that we create, they're a product of our collective participation, and do we want them? And if we want them, like, are they going to do good or bad for us? These are questions we don't have because I think that we all avoid them because they're really uncomfortable, right? Does anyone like have, just casual ethics conversations over dinner with their friends? No? Morality? Anyone study philosophy? Oh, bless your cotton socks. What do you do here? He went to a great school. Okay, so design. Here's the deal. I'm obsessed with design because the majority of the world around us is constructed. I call design the silent social scripter because it influences absolutely every single second of our lives. From the moment we are born to the moment we die, the things around us are created and constructed by the minds of other people. And they influence us. They cognitively condition us to how we experience the world. But not only that, they physically, like I have, what is it called, tech neck now, where you're like doing this too much. Remember when the old Nokia phones, the 5110s, they thought that our thumbs were getting too long because of all the texting? Anyone old enough to remember that? Yeah, well, now we're all getting like hunchback, like Notre Dame style from obsessive texting. So ultimately, the things that we create are physically influencing us. There's this thing called desire paths now. This, when you're walking through a landscape and you see where the path has been determined by, the engineers who said, oh, this is how a park should be. And then you see the well-worn paths of where the people decided to go because it was more convenient or more desirable. So the world influences us in such significant ways, but we have no idea most of the time. We're not dynamically engaged with this scripting that happens from the designed world. The thing about design, though, is there's a lot of duality in it. So there's things that are inviting and things that are exclusionary. For example, there's a whole movement in design to create things that are ergonomically uncomfortable, that stop homeless people from sleeping on benches, that make it impossible for 15-year-olds to skateboard across it, or pigeons can't land. So we create things that are exclusionary. And then we also create things that are inclusionary, that you want to desperately go into a subway because of all the smells that are coming out of it, even though you know the food's probably not good for you. So we create all of these motivators or demotivators in order to kind of script or control the way in which humans move in the world. And then we create absolute chaos and order. So humans are obsessed with like organizing everything. But the natural world that we interact with is completely chaotic. And I think that this idea that we can control nature in order to maximize our efficiency as a species has been this like eon-old battle where I think that we're kind of winning at some points and really losing in other points. I'll get to that in a second. And of course, we create all of these opportunities for some, like the economic gain of mass consumerism, and that for every opportunity, there's an externality or a loss. And so we know we have these huge issues with waste and the way in which our consumer society basically just pulls things out of the ground, functionalizes them for that's not a word, but I think it should be, functionalizes them for a very short period of time and then they waste. Like, how many cell phones do you guys have in your drawers? Seriously, like, who has less than 10 old cell phones? There's like 4 of you, 5 of you, great. So the scary thing is when I ask that to like 19-year-olds and they've had like 10 cell phones in their life already. And so we have this like perpetual waste cycle that ultimately is incredibly, it's incredibly dangerous because we run out of resources, but we also are creating legacies. Legacies that we will all actually, if we survive climate change, have to deal with because we're all going to live till we're like 100. So we have to start to think about and be more proactive on how we change the way we design and also the motivators around what we create. So as I said, I'm super obsessed with the brain. And does anyone know, you must know about cognitive biases, right? What are they? Someone tell me. We all know, but I don't want to speak to her. Nope, no one? Philosophy student over here? No? Yes?
Personally, you can have an anchoring bias that if I ask you how long is this room, is it between 10 or 50 meters, the likelihood of you telling me it's between 10 and 50 is because I anchored you. So that's the anchoring bias.
Yes, so there's about hundreds and hundreds of different biases, and anchoring is just one of the many that exist. But biases are basically these cognitive conditions that frame a point of reference in your brain. I call them the cognitive glitches, and they range from things like information bias, which I always say this, and now it's even funnier that I'm going to say it because I'm in Google, which is that if you're Googling and you notice that you actually skip a lot of the content because it doesn't attune to what the information that you want, that's called information bias. You have this like subconscious bias to avoid or filter out things that are going to contradict what you already believe, which explains a lot about the political situation in a lot of countries. And then we also have the choice paralysis. You know, when you're in the store and there's too many options and you end up leaving frustrated with nothing because you can't make a decision. So there's all of these cognitive biases that influence our everyday choices as we move throughout the world. And those biases are basically building up as these kind of like heuristics or decision-making platforms that we have no control over. Most people aren't walking out of the store going, well, I just got affected by choice paralysis, so I probably go somewhere with less choices, and that will help me make my cognitive condition much more better. Much more better doesn't work either. Much better. I really like to play with the English language. That's the Australian in me. Okay, so basically our brains, the beautiful hot mess that's inside our head that makes it possible for us to live, breathe, and survive and have existential crises, essentially are broken up into 3 major parts. And the squiggly bit that we all see when we imagine a brain is essentially the conscious component of our brain, which is the bit that we have control over, the bit that we numb with alcohol. But the majority of our decisions are actually influenced within the emotional central part of the brain called the limbic system. And the limbic system houses something called the amygdala. You guys heard of the amygdala? What is one of the main things the amygdala does? It starts with F. What? Fear? Yes. And do you know what's the response? Fight or flight? Fight, flight, or freeze response. So it's the nervous system response to a stimuli that's going to cause a problem. Now the thing is that the fight, flight, or fear response that we all have, so when you're confronted, anyone scared of snakes or spiders? Yeah, I have, oh good, look at that, I have my friends. But I am from a country where they kill you, so this is an irrational fear that I have, but literally if I see a spider that's even this big, I am out of the room so fast, squealing like a 5-year-old. It's incredibly embarrassing. I have no cognitive control over that response. And that is because the amygdala is programmed based on our hippocampus, our memory center, in order for us to survive, to know how to respond to things. It creates these like efficiency measures where it goes, well, you know, I've heard that those spiders are going to kill you. So every time we see one, we are making those legs move. And it's a fascinating thing when you start to consider how many of your reactions or actions are actually not a conscious decision at all. They're motivated by these emotional triggers. And it's very important because it's basically why we've survived to this point as a species. We've been incredibly successful at learning very quickly how to respond to problems and how to seek opportunities. Because the thing about the amygdala and this whole limbic system is it's controlling all of our neurochemicals. Who knows some of the neurochemicals that we have? The cocktail inside our head. Anyone? Yes. We have endorphins, yes, so they're serotonin, very good. 95% of serotonin is produced in your gut, but is the neurochemical that makes you happy when you get a reward for something. Dopamine, what does dopamine do? It is a drug. It's a driver as well. Yeah, it's a stimulant. So, and what are one of the other ones? There's like two really other important ones. Yeah, you got some good ones going on there. You got the complex ones that I can't even say yes, but the one I'm looking for is, what one? Adrenaline. Well, adrenaline is triggered by the system. I don't know if it's actually technically a neurochemical. I would have to Google that. I'm sure those jokes just don't get old at all. Oxytocin. Who knows what oxytocin is? Oh, guys, it's the best one. It's colloquially called the love drug, but in the last 10 years since MFRI scans have really gotten us to understand how our brains work in more detail, oxytocin has actually now become one of like the most interesting neurochemicals because it's a motivator of human connection. It's essentially the drug that is released during childbirth to make baby happening things like cervix opening and stuff. It's the first neurochemical that you get from breastfeeding, and it's the drug that bonds humans. So if you have a little like extended eye contact with someone, you will get oxytocin. When you're hanging out with people you genuinely care about, your body is flooded with oxytocin. After you have sex, you get oxytocin. Oxytocin, in my opinion, makes the world go round. That's not the topic of my conversation today, though. I do have a whole other talk I've done on this topic, but I will progress. Anyway, and then we have the primitive part of our brain, which is the bit that is actually not primitive, turns out really important. In the first few years of our life, it figures out how we don't end up looking like Michelin people walking around for the rest of our lives because it becomes the spatial understanding, creates the neurochemicals of being able to walk and talk. Anyway, so the brain, super complex, fascinating thing. You should all look into it. But what I want to get to is this idea. So we have these neurochemicals, this limbic system that's motivating out into the cerebral cortex. We think we're making conscious decisions, but we're actually kind of not. And then we have this whole economic structure that tells us that humans are essentially these hyper-rational things. That it's like Homo economicus, that we're going to rationally choose the best option for us in any given situation. And that means that producers can create products that have the best outcome for the consumer, and consumer will go and like make the best decision, and then the whole world will be happy and wonderful, and that's complete and utter bullshit. Like, it's been proven that humans are predictably irrational rather than rational. I mean, if you think about it, if you just think of the decision set that you've made in the last 24 hours, think about what was genuinely rational and what was basically just like, I want X, or I need Y, or I'm having an existential crisis, and half a bottle of whiskey makes complete sense to me right now. It's not very rational, right? In fact, we make a lot of choices that are irrational, that are based on this kind of like complex experience that is being a human living on this planet at this point in time. But all of our economic and social systems that we've set up as a species are based on a theory that keeps getting proven to not necessarily be correct. So how does this affect what we create? How does all of this like complexity that goes going on inside our minds affect the types of things we produce in the world and the types of actions we have? And not only that, like how we could possibly solve some of these super complex problems that we all face. Anyway, that's me. Let's go. I'm just going to go now. Just you guys figure it out. So our brains are really lazy, basically. That's the other thing. Because they're really busy, doing the whole like living thing. Like the fact that I can just breathe without having to think about it is really cool. Did you know it's physiologically impossible to kill yourself by like holding your own breath? I bet you everyone, like half of you are going to try this now. They're all like, let me see if I can kill myself. No, that's the primitive part of the brain kicks in. It's like survival is wired into our DNA as an incredible species. But so anyway, our brains are really efficiency-seeking machines. They really like habits. So I always like to challenge people to think about the office that they work in and the toilet cubicles that are available to them. And if you go to the same one most of the time, even if it's more inefficient to get to it, half of you are nodding, because our brains, like the first time you go into a new environment, your brain goes, oh, quick survey, what's my function here? Peeing, okay, great, that door's available, use it. And then every other time you come in, it goes, we've got this. I don't need to think about it. Let's think about food. And so what happens is next thing you know, you're like 4 cubicles to the left, even though there were 3 other options that were way more efficient to get to, but your brain was like, no, I got this. And so what happens is we have these like habitual decision-making processes that influence us, and like back to the information bias, for example, that's another one of these like energy-saving tactics that our brain does to us. Driving home, you know, you get home and you're like, how did I think I just drove home because it was such a normal route. Has anyone swapped operating systems on their cell phone recently from one evil corporation to another? Anyone? No? You all stick with the one. I bet I know which one it is as well. Well, I did, and the buttons for like exiting are in one's up the top and then the other one it's down the bottom. So like it took about 4 days for me to rewire my brain and for it to become habitual for me to go to the other space. And it was like so painful. Like I could feel my brain go, "Rah!" every time I did it wrong, and I got really angry at myself. And I could see why we get so addicted to technology, especially the ease of use in technology. Because as soon as our brains map to that, it's like, oh, I've so got this, it's great, everything's wonderful, let's just keep sending text messages. And it doesn't like to be challenged because it's too busy figuring out how to get food and get laid, because that's what its job is, so it's basically. But so we have these schemas, these reference points as well. They're the mental constructs that our brains use to fill in the blanks. So let me try one with you all. Think about how your brain works as I say this. 4 legs, flat top. What is it? What did you all think of first? You're all so quiet. Did someone say chickens? Chickens only have 2 legs. Unless you saw 2 chickens. A horse? Okay, most people see a dog, but that's, yeah, so some people saw a dog. Okay, so what about round and orange? No, it's not an orange. I'm tricking you because I put an orange up there. That would be silly. No, it's another round and orange thing that bounces. Thank you, yeah. Do you see what happens in your brain as I start to say the words? Your brain starts to literally draw what it thinks it sees. Now that's a schema, a reference point, and we use this all the time when we're designing experiences and we're creating products and services. We accidentally or intentionally create these reference points, like the anchoring bias that she mentioned. We're creating these points of reference to make our brains really quickly attune to something. And so when we're considering the impact that this has on the types of things we create, the kinds of technologies that exist, and how that is influencing us collectively as a species, these are the things I'm really interested in, because the more disassociated we become with the own visceral experience of living, the more we are ruining this planet, like really fucking it up. Can I say fucking it up on Google, at Google? Are you gonna bleep me? It's really stuffing it up. There we go, just in case. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Yes, great. Good, I've got many more swear words. And so these like critical life support systems of food, air, and water, like back to the breathing thing, you can't actually like kill yourself. Try holding your breath for longer than 60 seconds and that feeling of needing to breathe again. Has anyone been to China, to Beijing recently? Yeah? What happened? It hurt to breathe. Yeah, and it feels incredibly painful. Like, your whole body is like, no, this is bad. This is really bad. We should go now. And it's such a visceral experience to have a life-sustaining system like removed from you like that. And that's the same if you're like starving for food or you're thirsty for water. Yet collectively as a species, we are ruining the systems that sustain life on this planet. And I would love to see us be able to figure out replicating it to move to Mars. But I don't think we're going to be able to do it. Does anyone know about Biosphere 2? Oh gosh, guys, you are not eco-nerds. You should really Google biosphere 2 later. I didn't bring any pictures, I should have, because it was an experiment done in the 1990s in the Arizona desert where they spent $250 million replicating Earth's biosphere. This is biosphere 1. It was a closed loop, a closed tetrahedron. Looks like a giant, what's it called? The things that are really popular now that have plants inside the glass. Terranian, thank you. And they put 8 people in there. They were locked in there, air sealed in for 2 years to test whether or not humans would be able to live on other planets. What do you think happened? They died? They wouldn't let them die. It's real life. It's not a sci-fi film. Okay, I don't know what you do here, but what do you think actually happened? It didn't work. It was a completely beautiful mess. Of course, they broke into 2 warring tribes, and they throw pens at each other to this day. There's books about it. I actually went there a couple of months ago. I was invited to speak. It was like on my bucket list of things to do, and I got to hang out and have dinner with one of the bionauts. Yes, they are called bionauts, and they all wore beautiful red jumpsuits like space explorers when they went in. And they also told me that the only room inside the biosphere that was locked was the room that contained the bananas, because the bananas were the currency, because there was not enough food. They had to produce all of their own food. Everyone was starving. If you look at photos, they all became incredibly malnourished. And so the bananas became like literally the resource if you think about another species that really likes bananas. And when I was hanging out with one of the bionauts, I was like, look, this is crazy. We're basically monkeys. And she goes, oh, you should have seen what we did for the peanuts. I was like, are you serious? So we kind of we love to think that we can recreate the incredible complexity that is this planet, which is a miracle that we've even managed to survive. Yet what we do is we kind of keep messing it up in our attempts to do so. So I mentioned that I'm absolutely obsessed with sustainability, but I want to just get a little bit of a reading in the room of what people think sustainability means. So give me the words that come to mind.
Zero waste.
Very good, zero waste. What else? Efficiency, carbon footprint, what else? Something else? Balance, what else?
Perpetual.
Oh, okay, very good. What are some of the things that are used in marketing? What do you see when you're in the supermarket? Recycled, organic, green, renewable, biodegradable, fair trade. Okay, so these are all terms that are used to describe properties of materials. Something that exists in nature can do. Biodegrading, renewable, what did you say? Perpetual, yeah. So it's like regenerative. And these are great terms, but they don't describe what sustainability is. In fact, most people have a very limited understanding about what we're trying to achieve. It's the economic, social, and environmental considerations of the things we do so that we don't mess the planet up for current and future generations. In my mind, it's a really freaking cool aspiration. It's a point of reference to say, well, collectively, as a species, what are we trying to do with our time on this planet? And in my mind, we're trying to figure out how to not ruin it and to kind of perhaps respect this incredible beauty of what we've actually come from and what we enjoy. Like I said, back to the butterflies, they're freaking awesome. Anyway, it's not this either. It's not hugging trees. It's not this idea of you having to wear hemp or be really hippie. I was going to say something else then and I stopped myself. But there's this perpetual idea that you have to opt into sustainability. But I don't opt into breathing. I don't have a choice about that. That just happens to be a biological requirement for my survival. And I think that this disassociation that we've managed to create is part of this cognitive condition that we've created as a species where we're so obsessed with the technology that exists in the world around us that we're not anymore connected as a species to each other and to the planet. And one of the biggest killers in the world right now, does anyone know what the biggest cause of death is? Shh. No. Not malaria, nope. It's not obesity. Pollution. Nope, pollution. Cancer. Nope. I love it. You guys let's just go through all of the world's problems. No, actually, it's related to loneliness. Did someone say loneliness? Yeah. It's all associated illnesses to loneliness. The human being is a social animal. The death to a human cognitively is exclusion. Nearly everything we do neurologically is to be included. It's to be respected. It's to be loved. It's to get the oxytocin and not the neurochemical of cortisol, which is the stress hormone that gives us anxiety and really bad feelings in your stomach and other things. So we have this like predisposition to seek out other humans and to find some sort of contentment in the world we live in. And we live on this planet with finite resources, yet we don't respect those resources because we create things. And we're an incredibly complex species, as I think I've hopefully iterated to you. Humans complex, world complex, systems figuring themselves out. So this is the deal. The world's made up of these complex systems. There's the human systems, the social constructs that we all create, we've collectively bought into. So name a social system. Marketing? Democracy. Yes, democracy is completely a construct of humans. What are the other constructs that we've created to survive as a species, to create order? Huh? Marriage. Oh, you guys have got good ones. What, community? I wonder if that's a social construct or a basic necessity.
Religion.
Religion, definitely a construct. Tax, good one. Pain in the bum. Totally. What about education? What about law? Countries, nations, the idea of nations. I think continents nature figured out over time, but then the idea of a passport and where you're allowed to go and not allowed to go. So we've constructed all of these social systems, highly complex social systems, in order to create order and in order to manage the chaos that would otherwise probably exist if we didn't have these kind of socializing structures like laws, which is wrong and right, and education, which is all about like numbing our brains to become good worker bees. That's a whole other story. So, okay, what's something in the industrial system? Sorry? A road. I love that I can't understand some of your accents. A road, okay, good. Other things? Road is part of the transport system, logistics. Other? Sorry? Trading? Yeah, I wonder if that's part of an industrial system. The industrial systems are the things we manufacture in order to facilitate the social system. So like cell phone manufacturing, waste removal, satellites. I don't know where the internet quite sits in this because it requires physical things, but it's a total construct of the human condition. Or did the internet exist before us? Let's talk about it. No, okay, and then the ecosystem, obviously, we know these. Give me an ecosystem. This is where actually people go, I don't know. I don't remember year 5 science. Rainforest, very good. The sea, oceans, the hydrocycles, the reason that climate change is existing because of the way in which the atmosphere protects us from space. That's not what climate change is, by the way. That was a really bad explanation of it. Just so you know. It's like, oh, she cares about sustainability. She doesn't know what the fuck climate change is. I actually just confused the hole in the ozone layer and climate change in my head when I went to say it. Not good. I actually do know what climate change is. Just so you know. Greenhouse gases from farting cows. No, that's actually not true. They're burping cows that cause the problems. Okay, so basically we have these incredibly complex systems, some of which we have control over, some of which we don't have control over, like the climate, contrary to certain political people's beliefs, and that we have to embrace this system's mindset. So if our brains are influencing most of our decisions, then don't you think it's important that we have a little bit more of a structure within our brains that enables us to understand and engage with those systems in more intimate ways? Does anyone know what this picture is of?
Satellites.
Yeah, it's space debris around this planet that we all live on. And we've become so incredibly globalized that this idea of nation states technically should probably not exist anymore, yet we are not actually a global species. Like, we're not working together as a species. I was very fortunate enough to hang out with a real life astronaut. And after I stopped going astronaut, I asked him about what it was like to see Earth from space. And Ron explained to me that, of course, it was like incredibly amazing, the fragility of the planet. He actually used to say goodnight to the planet from his little porthole. It's very cute. But what he told me was that, so he went up twice to space, one time when he was coming back to Earth, they kind of come in this like crazy shuttle, and it lands. I don't know how it lands without smashing, but that's a physics question, I think. But anyway, his little porthole landed, and he saw three things when he kind of like came to, I guess. One was a rock, the other thing was a flower and a blade of grass, and he was so happy to see life, and he was like, oh my gosh, I'm home. But he's an American in Turkmenistan. And he had this like profound realization that home was this entire planet, and it didn't matter where he was from, that it was his responsibility to work towards solving some of the complex problems, and that's what he does today. Yet we extract and use resources faster than the Earth can replenish them. We live on one planet. It'd be great if we could figure out basically how to use the resources that we need within what's called the Earth's carrying capacity. So the red line is where we've overshot the Earth's ability to sustain the rate of production and waste that we currently have. So we really need to figure out how we can solve some of these problems. And I am totally of the opinion that we can. Otherwise, I would have more of a drinking problem. But one of the big issues is that we often use the same thinking that led to a problem to try and solve it. That is an Einstein quote. And one of the basics of systems thinking, which is one of the big solution sets I think we can use to overcome these issues, is to realize that most of the problems today was someone else's solution. Whether it was 10 minutes ago or 10 years or 100 years, somebody else came up with the idea that this designed intervention was going to solve the problem. And then, because of the way in which the complex systems work, it often ends up becoming another problem. So the Industrial Revolution was freaking amazing. We solved so many problems. We have elongated lives. We live in this incredibly luxurious time. But the ramifications of those decisions have finally caught up with us. So now we need to rewrite the scripts that validate this type of energy production. We need to think about how we can change this. But we have this problem because so much of the world is broken up into this wrong and right, and this duality. And I have this kind of obsession at the moment with ethics, and tech ethics especially, like technology and design, because of all this research and work I've been doing around experience design, and I see the power of it, and how easily it is to create an experience or an opportunity that literally rewrites someone's brain. But we don't have conversations about whether or not we want some of the technological advancements that we have, or whether we need to even question if they're even necessary, or if we're even investing in the right things right now. As a species, we have gotten to where we are because we had debates about what was right and wrong. And we made decisions collectively about whether it was correct to kill children if they were annoying. Remember when it was okay to slap kids? I don't know why my brain just thought of that. But it was completely okay for a period of time, and now it's really not okay. And there was a period not too long ago when it was completely okay for a woman to have her ass pinched in the workplace, and for people to be like, well, that's just the way it is here. And now you get sued, thank God. But so this is the really important thing. We're not having conversations at the same rate as the technological advancements that we're all becoming either a victim or a benefiter of. And we live in this complex world, and so there's incredibly complex universal decisions. What is right in one country is completely wrong in another. It's incredibly complicated, but we avoid it because of this neurological condition where we're all like, oh, I want efficiency, and I want it to be easy, and I just want dopamine and oxytocin, so give me chocolate and whiskey. Is that the 4th time I've mentioned whiskey? It's good. Someone's counting. See if I can get 8 times. So everything's in this constant universal flux. We live in this chaotic mess of a planet that's incredibly beautiful, that's created life on Earth, but we avoid having to deal with the complexity. We don't look at the systems. We don't challenge ourselves to have the difficult conversations. And as a result of that, we give up a level of our autonomy and agency as an individual and as a collective species. When we start to just assume that the status quo is the given, and we don't question, and we don't challenge, and we don't have a little bit of tension in how our lives are, then we ultimately perpetuate the systems that we don't necessarily agree in. So this idea of whether or not we're going to end up with artificial intelligence, I really don't want a robot therapist. I want a real therapist who cries real tears. I don't want a robot therapist. Are we going to have that conversation? Who's going to have that conversation? I heard you guys have an ethics committee. that nobody knows who's on it. This is really unethical to have an ethics committee that you don't tell who's on the ethics committee. Like if you have like Hitler or Donald Trump on the ethics committee, I think that things are going to be really screwed. Seriously. The whole point of ethics is that we have debate, discussion, and dialogue, that we have the uncomfortable points of diversion, and so that we get to this collective agreement as a species whether or not some of these rapid technological decisions are going to be the best outcome for us, or if they're going to be a complete and utter waste of time or money. I would really love to see some of that money, just a little slither, going into the sustainability problem, like just a little bit. Because we have all of these unintended consequences. I was going to give you an example, but I'm running out of time, so I won't. Ask me later. And so I guess what I'm kind of getting at is, how do we figure out what we value and whether or not we should be investing our collective energy as a species and also our individual capacity as a human in solving what kind of problems? Like, do we design solutions to problems that exist, or do we just design for the sake of designing? And that's something I think we don't have enough of a dialogue about. And there's been so many points in history. Does anyone know about this research experiment with the monkeys? You're like, I don't want to look at the poor monkeys. You're like, this woman is really ruining me here. How do I get out of this room? So it's like, we have so many historical examples of when humans make decisions that impact other species, and this is just one of the many examples where these monkeys were kind of tortured, where they were removed from their mothers and they were given a wire mother that had spikes and then a soft mother, but the wire mother gave them food. And so they cling to the soft mother even, like, for their dear life because of attachment and the desire to feel loved. And it's just, to me, represents so much about how we make decisions, right, about how we treat people and how we exist in the world that have really, really significant ramifications, but we don't have the discussions that lead to the kinds of answers that we need. So, in my positive note, now that I've just possibly hurt a few of you, is I am fully of the opinion that we can totally solve these problems, and we just need more pioneers in systems change. We need people who are willing to ask the complex questions and be willing to be wrong. And I'm really lucky because I started this school a couple years ago, and I get to meet people from around the world. This is our first year cohort of 68 people from 28 countries. We now have 120 alumni, and they're just people who have decided that the status quo is not what they want to do, and that they want to figure out ways that they can challenge the status quo, whether they be from Colombia or New Zealand or Ghana. And they're designers, creative scientists, engineers. They're people who are just like, you know what? I got taught that I can participate in this world, but I'm not being given any agency to do so. And so how do we figure out how to get that agency, how to grow a sphere of influence and do something more significant? And so I developed this disruptive design method, which is an approach to challenging the status quo. And I love the fact that, like, the word disruption, I think it was like the word of the year last year or something, is totally misunderstood, and people use the term disruptive innovation often without understanding the historical context with which it came from. But the way we frame disruption is all about intent to intervene in a system to create an alternative outcome. So in order to do disruption well, you must have an understanding of the system, the status quo, and know the dynamic relationship between the elements and figure out how to intervene to leverage the kind of outcome that's going to create something better than what is currently the status. And we have this idea of innovation, this iterative changes. I mean, innovation is no longer a word that anyone really uses, right? Like, it was so big like 5 years ago. We need an innovation department. And now we're all talking about disruption, which is great. I'm a big fan of Buckminster Fuller, and he always said that the best way to change a system is to design a new one that makes the old one obsolete. You invest your energy in the creation of something new that's beautifully designed to fit the system, and the old archaic systems disappear. So in this methodology, we really look at cognitive sciences, ethics, we look at sustainability and social change and systems thinking, and all of the different tools that one needs in order to activate their agency in the world with whatever pre-existing skill set they already have. We mine problems, we landscape systems, and we build solutions. And essentially, it's basically a way of figuring out how you can take what you already have and within the immediate time period that you have, start to actively and iteratively participate in the world. And I don't mean that in like, okay, now you're going to go chain yourself to trees, because I already explained that that's not what sustainability is. The first point is to start thinking differently and to figure out how you can, in your day-to-day, every single moment of your professional lives, participate in changing the status quo so it's better for all of us. And continue to do that. It's just iterative. So that, my friends, was my session on disruption by design. But I have a reward for you all. I have a game. Do you want to play a quick game? Because you all look slightly depressed. Yes, sorry.
We're going to rewrite our brains.
Yes, you're going to rewrite your brains in like 2 minutes. Okay, so as I said, I did all this research into gender equity, and one of the outcomes that I did, I came up with this toolkit that helps develop empathy, because empathy is actually a visceral experience that you have. And I don't know what I did with my cards. Oh, there they are. So this is still my prototype. Everyone stand up. And can everyone can you hand out, my friend, everyone like a little pile of those? Can you hand out just a little pile of words, like maybe 6 cards or something? Can you hand out some of those? So everyone needs a little pile of cards, about 5 or 6 cards. And don't look at them yet. And I'll just explain the instructions as you get your cards. What you're going to do is when I say go, you're going to find another human. There's plenty in the room. You just need one other human. And you're going to start by one of you is going to hold up your word and you're going to say it out loud. The other person has to say if the thing that comes in their mind is male, female, or neutral. So you have to, like we did with the schemas, the first thing that comes into mind, is it male, female, or neutral, and then explain why. And then if you held up the word, your job is to say what you saw in your mind. Once you start, it'll make sense. And then you just keep swapping with the words. Okay, go. Hold a word up, find a human, hold a word up. Okay, you have to go find a new human now. Find a different human. Different human. And you should be sharing what's in your mind, what you see in your mind. Once you explain what gender it is. New human, new human. You play. What have you got?
Stupid.
Stupid?
Yeah.
Boy.
Okay,
But no, you have to ask why. Oh, okay. Because I see a really stupid boy that annoyed me when I was in university. I actually see his head. He really annoyed me. How about you?
To be honest, I was doing that and I couldn't see it as a boy, as a girl. Like,
Didn't you say we're neutral? Well, what did you see?
I didn't see something. I was seeing exactly the thing.
Just blank.
Yeah,
Just blank. You see blank. All right, let me try one. What about... I just did stupid again. Limp. You don't know what it means?
No, I do, but I just see a link. I just see like I don't see it like gender. So I cannot see it as a gender.
Yeah, but it doesn't. You don't see it as a gender. You feel it as an emotion.
Yeah.
So is it more feminine, like your mother, or is it more masculine? Like limp to me is like I see a doctor addressing someone who's sick. So to me, it's more like masculine because it's like a doctor. And you can use this with any binary. So you could say like, it's just the idea is your brain associates things and it gives you the opportunity of sharing with someone else something that is actually quite subliminal to you, right?
For all these words, this was just one that immediately came as...
Which was that?
It was fun.
Fun. And what was it that you saw? All right. Stop! All right, so I don't need that, I'm very loud. What happened? Someone share with me what happened.
We thought some of our responses were sad.
Oh, why is that?
Because we were clearly gender biased.
Yes, this is true. But that's not necessarily sad. It's a product of the condition, and now that you understand that, you can rewrite it, right? That's my positive spin on it. Okay, what else? Yeah?
You'd say male or female, and then they say why. You go, I don't really know why. I just say.
It's like a feeling, right? Yeah, but how was it when you had to actively think of the visual in your brain? Is it something we're not used to doing, right? Seeing the images that our brain provides us. And when you received information from someone else, did anyone find they felt a little bit like, aw, towards them? Did that happen at all? Like, aw. Anyone have yeah, what was it?
With pain, he felt female because of childbirth.
Oh. Have you witnessed childbirth?
I have,
Yeah. Wow.
I'm sorry, it's a fucking thing.
Yes. But so that feeling, that's a manifestation of empathy. And the reason I developed this game was because what happens is every time someone shares something with you, the first thing is you do get to be exposed to your own biases, but there's this also rewriting of the scripts. Especially when you're opposing genders, having this conversation, and someone shares something with you that goes against your stereotypical view of what the other gender is. And there's this moment of building an alternative version, which actually totally rewrites the scripts that our brain have. And it helps to build a better, deeper understanding of the other. Because all stereotypes are based on the idea of the fear of the other. And we have all of these cognitive conditions that basically make our brains go, oh no, they're not like us. But as soon as you start to understand someone, and you can use this with any binary, like I use it for gender because I've been doing gender, and because it's Google, because you guys have got 70% white men working for you. It's a really big problem. Do something about it. Any other insights? All right, guys, if you have any questions for me, otherwise we can wrap up.
Right. Thank you very much. Right.
We
have about 4
minutes.
We have 4. I'll put this on. We have about 4 minutes for questions. Then we're going to go for lunch, and anyone is welcome to come for lunch. We're going to sit on the 4th floor. So, does anyone have just a couple of quick questions?
Did I ruin you all?
I'll ask a question.
Sure.
So, you're talking about kicking off a debate.
Yes.
And having that conversation. How would you see that conversation happening on a global scale? Because I would argue that the internet is a good medium.
Oh, the internet. I heard about that thing.
But that often the voices on the internet are those who shout loudest, but are often the fringe voices.
Yeah, like the haters.
The haters.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
How would you kickstart that conversation?
That's a really good question. So I think that one of the most, the internet, yeah.
Or other media.
Yeah, I just worked on a project in Brazil around corruption. And one of the points of intervention that we worked on was the kitchen table, or like the dining table. People don't talk about corruption, and this is how it's like a cultural thing, and that's perpetuated a status quo, which has led to the slight disaster that is the corruption scandal in Brazil. So I wonder if, like, when you look at the internet, where you would want to intervene in the conversation points, because I don't think it's as simple as just saying, it's the internet. Like, I think that there are probably places where, it's a really good question. I mean, I don't want to be obvious, right? Like, oh, we should have like a Twitter campaign. I don't think it's that simple. I think that collectively, like conversations need to be built on. They need to be like challenged. And we see this happen, right? Like where suddenly there's this like big storm about one particular political issue or something, and then suddenly like the internet goes crazy for it for like 24 hours, and then it disappears again. And then it was like consciously, it was like it never happens. Like whether it be an extreme social problem like terrorism through to like one ridiculous statement that a football player made, we have this like very short attention span on the internet. So I don't know if the internet's the best solution. I don't know. My answer is I don't know.
So how will you
Let's all talk about it.
How would you kickstart those kitchen table conversations? You said Brazil. You know, how do you get people to talk?
That's my mechanism. I really would design experiences that other people can use to overcome the inertia. So this idea of equipping people with the right tools, whether they be the cognitive tools or the physical tools that help have conversations that you would otherwise never have, right? So for 2 minutes, you all just had a conversation about gender, and you actively participated in it, and you had a slight rewriting of your brain as a result of that experience. And in fact, the majority of our cognitive changes happen through experience. So I think that the internet plays a very important role in having the conversations, but the design of the intervention needs to be longitudinal and not just like a puff of hot air. That it needs to have depth, and we need to be serious but playful about the conversations, I think. I think that it's too easy to simplify complexity to a point where it becomes cheap. Right, so I don't have an answer immediately. I would probably have to think a little bit harder about it, but yeah. Any other questions? Don't make him give me questions, they're hard. No, you're all like...
In which case, we'll say thank you very much,
My
and anyone is
pleasure.
welcome to
Thank
join us
you.
for lunch. Thank you, ladies.